Hello, 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 everybody. Welcome back to Paragon Bootcamp 2021, Day 3. We are just mere moments away from our monster lecture, so I'm not going to mince any words. We're going to get right into it. Hailing from the Kingdom of Crystal Groves, we are very, very pleased to have with us a Paragon monster who is going to share all of his wisdom with us today. Please put your digital hands together for Delas.
Good afternoon. My name is Delas. As said before, I come from the Kingdom of Crystal Groves, from the park at Rising Sun Station. We'll be talking about Monster today. I'll be touching on leveling, garb, roleplay in and out of battle games and questing, and a little bit about, and basically those are going to be the main topics for today. So for leveling, leveling in Monster is an interesting experience because at level 1, whereas in a lot of classes you have your set abilities, whether it's with wizards and you got 5 points of magic to spend in that area, or you have your base abilities from all the other classes. Monster has 13 different monsters to play, which all have their own unique abilities to use and their own unique gaming styles. Some like to stand in the front line, some like to run around in the back line, and all areas in between. It seems like a lot at first, but once you read through and look through all of the monsters, you'll find the ones that vibe well with what you play, your play style, the things you look forward to in a class gaming, and so when I started my leveling journey, I sat down and I looked through the door, which is the monster guide. And I basically sat through and read through each and every monster and was like, this one seems fun, but not really my style. And I basically picked one monster from each level, 1 through 6, and was like, these are the monsters I'm going to focus on, and I'm going to try and play throughout, learn them, have fun with them. In the end, they didn't all get into the rotation. Some I either didn't have the time to get garb for, level up. The style changed. I didn't enjoy that style of playing anymore. But it set a goal for me in that at this level, we're going to play this monster here. It's going to evolve and help me on my journey to the next level and so on. I found that playing different monsters in different roles, such as frontline, backline, support, that kind of stuff, has definitely helped expand my enjoyment of battle games and all of that other fun thing. So as you're going through the door, looking through, finding the monsters that you're interested in, you're going to have garb requirements for them. The basic garb requirement is going to be the silver sash and the monster write-up, which you'll find in the door, actually. And so for there, you'll have, so for Goblin, for example, one of the first level 1 monsters you can play, or sorry, for Hill Giant, first level 1 monster you can play is your basic garb is a silver sash, brown or white tunic, and that is the minimum. That's the base. That's where you want to start. From there, it gives examples of things that you can add to increase, like not to increase, but to help other people see the type of monster you're playing. So, for example, for Hill Giant, it would be anything that makes you look taller. So if you have like, I guess you have like stilts, or like you have a garb that is puffier, bigger, makes you look larger than you actually are. That would help with the look the part. It also says to like smear white or brown face paint on, such as like the dirt from the hills and mountains as you're climbing around, as giants move around and stuff like that, right? but you want to start with the basics of the monster. So when you start with the basics, the white and brown tunic and the silver sash, the upgrades for your garb would be the smeared face paint and the making you look larger than you actually are on the field. And so that for that would yeah. And that's how you sort of like move up in garbing for your monster. So first thing that you must always have as a monster is the write up for that monster. So what I do is I go to the door, copy the monster that I'm going to play that day or that week or the month or whatever however long I intend to play that monster, copy and paste it into a Word document, and then print out a couple sheets of that, and then just stick them in my bags, put them in my pocket, hold on to them because you will need them. It's like the wizard spell sheets, wizard, bard, healer. They all have the spell sheet. You need to have your monster write up because you need to be able to hand it to a reeve so the reeve can look at it. You also need to be able to pull it out if another player has a question about it, and you can eventually you'll be able to just rattle off your abilities. You'll know exactly what you do and how you do it. But other players like to sometimes look at the write up and see that, hey, I have blink twice a life and blink twice a life, and that I also have a poison. It helps them understand understand your abilities. And another thing that I also like to do when I first bring a monster out onto the field is while teams are in the process of being picked for a battle game, I will stand up at the front, list off all of my abilities, what they do, and then I'll take questions from players, whether they're asking like uh, whether they're asking like if Flame Blade is a trait or if it's an ability they can dispel. I'll have a bunch of questions people ask, and then I try and help them out as best as possible, understand the monster that they'll be seeing on the field. Not necessarily to like, hey, this is how you're going to kill me throughout the game, but like these are the steps that you could use to get to that point, and so that it's not just me walking onto the field being like, I'm here, I have 14 points of armor, yada yada yada, and them not understanding how this monster is going to interact with the game. And it helps the game flow. It also because people are not stopping the game to be like, hey, I thought you said you had 2 points of armor. Why do you have 3? That kind of stuff. It helps the reeves out. It helps your other players out, and it helps with the enjoyment of the game when people understand that you have certain abilities and that you're here with those abilities are not changing. Um, the second thing that you'll need to know when playing Monster is that it is entirely up to the game master or whoever is running the game, as well as the reeves, whether that A, you can play that monster that you want to play that day, or B, what abilities you can continue to use. Monster is one of the only classes in Amtgard that the reeves can look at you, say, this ability is game breaking, you're not allowed to use it anymore. And that's how it is. That's how Monster has been written into the rules. I have yet to have that used. Like no reeves have come in and been like, hey, you're using Fireball too much, it's breaking the game, like we really need you to like cut that out for a bit. But it is something that as a monster you will have to understand that they can do that, and that's just how it's going to be. There's also going to be a lot of times when you could show up to field fully garbed, ready to go as like a fox or a wolf or whatever, right? And the game that you're playing that day, playing that monster will break it. And the Reeves will say, I'm sorry, but like it will be unfun for the rest of the park if you play this monster. You can play XYZ monster, or we really need you to just play like healer, druid, whatever else you play normally. And for that day, you're just, it's going to be, it's unfortunate, but you're just going to have to play as one of the normal classes for Amtgard. Um, so Garb. Touched on Garb a little bit earlier, but we'll be going a little bit more in depth now. So for each Garb, for each monster, they have a generally unique set of Garb. Though some parts might be interchangeable and can work for multiple monsters, such as horns, um, black clothing, brown clothing, that kind of stuff. Fur can be switched through multiple monsters if you have like a fur pelt or your Garb has a bunch of fur on it. This can help reduce the cost of garbing for monster because it can be kind of expensive. Not as, I wouldn't say it'd be as much as like Warrior where you get the full 6-point plate if you go that route, but it definitely does have a cost to monster. I think I haven't spent a lot on it, but it is definitely probably the most I've spent for Amtgard outside of like going to long events farther away from where I'm based, right? A lot of the costs can be reduced by like going to thrift stores, going to Halloween stores, like after Halloween's over, picking up this cool like mask, werewolf mask, zombie mask, that kind of stuff can help lower your cost as well as upgrade your Garb and help other people understand the monster that you're playing. Another thing that I found is that if you talk to people at your park that are making Garb, going for Garber awards, that kind of stuff, work out with them. Hey, I'm looking to like get some Garb together for werewolf that I want to play. I need some fur type Garb. This is what I'm looking for. How much would it be? And then they can A, work on that with you, and B, put it in for their own awards to help. And you help your park with that that way. So some things that will pick up and help you increase your Garb to standards that people like look at you. So like right now you look at me and I'm in part of my monster Garb. But you look at me, you see just a normal player, right? Now come over, throw on a mask. I am now an Infernal Descendant. Sorry, that was but just the mask, the Garb, which is already black, dark Garb, base. So base Garb of black and red and black. And then horns are generally the second part for Infernal Descendant. And then everything after that is an add-on. One of the examples is demon wings, or bat wings technically, and a tail. Adding those to the Garb will help players understand that, hey, not only with the silver sash, but the fact that they have these wings and tail, just help them understand that you are playing something other than one of the base Amtgard classes. And again, for another monster, vampire, it's dark clothing. Double check. It's white sash, white makeup or mask and fangs. Cloak, which is a cloak. and then as per player class, so whatever you normally would wear. So my vampire wears this mask most of the time, also because wearing fangs on a field, unless I'm like in a tavern somewhere RPing, generally not a good idea. You don't want to like accidentally swallow them. And a lot of the times, you just throw on the mask. You're now something new that can, and so you can use that to not only keep the cost down, but also portray different monsters. And also, and so these are the basic like things that you should use for monster, right? So like in for vampire specifically, it says silver sash, white makeup, or a mask. So I don't particularly like putting makeup on. It's just I don't like the feeling on my face, right? Some people, so I use a mask. Fangs, cloak, and as per player class. So take your normal garb, add those things to it, and you have vampire. In that is so that's your baseline, right? If you add, excuse me, and you don't have to stay at that baseline. You can go out in different directions. So one of the things that I've seen in the past is players that play like a goblin, for example. Their base garb is a silver sash, crude rags, basically. That's like the main staple of the class, with brown or green face paint or a mask to help them like portray being a goblin. What I've seen in the past is players take the silver sash, like that's a given, you have to take that. Brown and green face paint, and instead of using crude rags, their goblin character found a stash of old noble's clothes. So it's still like raggedy, not that great, because goblins don't particularly care. They're out running around doing whatever, right? Usually in stories and stuff. But they now have way fancier garb than what a typical goblin would have, right? And it not only moves them up in garb requirements, but it also helps them like portray their character as not just I'm this dude in rags, got this green face mask on. Like they now have character for the character, which I think is pretty cool. I've done this with my Infernal Descendant. Instead of having bat wings, which I don't particularly like, I've gone for like the Raven style black wings with feathers falling out, like he's not taking care of them. He's there. He cares about them, but he doesn't. Like they've fallen into disrepair, and so whereas like a celestial would have like perfect wings, white, like ready to go, his are, I wouldn't say like he hasn't given up on them, but they're definitely not as taken care of as somebody else's what might have been, right? And so giving your monster those kind of tweaks to the garb requirements can really like elevate how people look at you while you're playing that character. One of the other things I found is that if you're playing as you're playing monster, being able to help explain how abilities work within the monster manual, because there are a few newer ones. I would say new ones, but like they've changed them a little bit, and so things sometimes don't mesh as well as you would think with how to explain this. They so like So like there will be abilities that people have that are not in the main book. One of them being sheer numbers for goblins. It is kind of like warriors. Um, it's kind of like warriors wicked flee when I pursue, except instead of being frozen, yeah, true grit. Thank you. Instead of true grit, um, while warriors do use it immediately after dying, sheer numbers is the same. It is a death trigger. Instead, you go insubstantial instead of frozen. So there's one difference. And you move as per blink for sheer numbers, whereas warriors, you're stuck and frozen in that one spot until, and so warriors are stuck for 30 seconds, and sheer numbers acts as per blink when you, and you can come out of it using the exact same rules as blink, right? And that's how goblins go from being a slight menace and being used well. It can elevate them to like a serious threat if they're not, like, people do not pay attention to them, because normally goblins are fragile. Double check that. Yeah, so they have cheer numbers, which is twice life, and they're fragile. So one hit kills them. But with sheer numbers, you kill one, another one pops up, another one pops up. A lot of the times in books and in movies and stuff like that, there's never just one goblin, right? And so this helps the goblin player portray the fact that there are multiple goblins, they're a threat to the party or whatever is going on, like how whatever the quest designer has decided is going on in this area, and it helps them move on through. Go on through that. So a lot of people also talk about role playing for monsters. I feel there are two styles, kind of. There's role playing in battle games versus role playing in quest games. Role playing in battle games is more of on the person expanding, like, not really the lore, but like showing off how that character, their monster character would play, and how they would think about situations. For example, when I play Fire Giant, I find the quote unquote biggest threat on the field and I go and fight them, because Fire Giants, in how the door is written, are a warlike race, which, and they fight a lot and they find, which also helps keep them in kind of like control, because uh, they can't really gain territory so much because they're always fighting, so you're always going to have a way around. So I generally will find the biggest threat on the field, whether it's a player, caster, warrior, what have you, and I'll fight them. And then when either I die or they die, I look around and I'm like, all right, this is my spot, this is my territory, you got to stay away from me. If somebody comes at me, fight them. If I die, go back to spawn, find somebody else on the field, go up to them, fight them. This is my territory now, I'm going to defend it. Or I'd say, that guy's even bigger and stronger. Or that archer is like really pelting our team and they're a big threat. And I want to fight that person and be, quote unquote, the monster wants to, quote unquote, be better than that person. So they go over and fight them. All right. And that will, a lot of the times, put me in bad spots, quote unquote, bad spots on the field, or pull me away from objectives, and will help both sides see that the role play that I'm doing is, hey, I want to be the biggest thing. I quote unquote want to be the biggest thing on this field, and I'm going to fight the people that are here. And this can be used to pull my character away from mainline fighting where they would excel and help push through an objective to be relegated to a smaller portion of the field, and people can, with teamwork, work around that, right? And so a lot of the times what people think, let's say and so a lot of times I either end up right in the middle of the action because that's where the biggest person is where they're fighting the most, where they're winning the most, and I want to be in there being like, hey, I can win too. Or I get pulled off to the side and the monster is now a threat, but they're off to the side and not really in the thick of the action where they could be an even bigger threat. And so a lot of times what you do for what people do in that situation is they either freeze, uh, they either freeze or stop me in an area, and that generally just becomes my fire giant's area, right? Um, in role play or not role play in questing style games, a lot of the times the monster that you are selected to play, if you sign up, is generally out of your control. A lot of the times you'll be given garb to use from the questers, or if you have time uh, and have been like you signed up to play a wolf at a kingdom event, you have the time to get that garb together and time to think about how you want that character to play, and time to talk to the um, quest makers for the event to see how they would like you to play that character, and you can really help improve the quest line that they want to push for that event. And a lot of the times for that, they'll give you set. Here's the goal for your monster. Here's the goal for the players. We want you to, like, some of the times they'll say, like, we want you to be annoying but not detrimental to their ability to do something, or we want you to be a friendly, like, you're a friendly character, you're here to help them progress along the lines and push the goals of the game. um, and so it can really go either way. A lot of times, and a lot of times the quest givers will give you free reign, not free reign, but like more reign than a lot of people think to portray the monster how you would like. Um, and so a lot of the other things that come with monster are also understand some of the laws for your area. In the area that I play in, um, we are technically not allowed to wear masks unless we have permission from the park or place that we're playing at, because of the law. And so a lot of the times, most people, like, it isn't a big issue until it does become one. Um, and so a lot of the times when I'm playing my characters, while I do have my mask, it's some of the times it's on if I'm doing a RP with somebody, but a lot of the times it's hanging on my belt, just so that I can pull it off and be like, all right, we're talking now. This is the character. All right, because of how the laws of this area work, I need to take it off now and put it to the side. But it's always with you. It's always there. A lot of it, and each area has different laws. So for somewhere north of me or south of me or west or east, right, not going to be the same. So just have a general understanding of what your area allows and doesn't allow. Um, I haven't had any issues with it yet, and I intend to not have any issues with it. Um, but yeah, just have a general understanding that sometimes some of the things that you would like to do with Monster, for whatever reason, not always able to do because of rules outside of the game. Yeah. Also, look through as you're looking through the book and figuring out what monster you would like to play. Sit down and think about how each ability interacts and how it can affect or affect teams. Because people are going to ask you all sorts of questions about your abilities, from the amount of times you can use them to like how this ability interacts with another ability, right? For example, one of the abilities in that a few monsters have is called Flight. It is kind of like Sanctuary in that can't be hit by physical attacks. Abilities, projectiles that originate within 20 feet. But outside of that, if somebody's standing 21 feet away and they cast Call Lightning on you, it works. Throw an arrow, throw a spell ball, hit you with an arrow, that kind of stuff, still works exactly like Sanctuary. Where it gets weird is players that have the large trait, such as giants, can actually physically fight you with sword, shield, sword, spear, that kind of stuff. And Flight and large kind of interact that way. So that if you're flying and I'm a large monster, we can still fight. But my buddy who's standing 5 feet away from you can't stab you in the back with a javelin or whatever, right? The other interesting thing about Flight is that if you get hit with the frozen state or a stop state, you immediately lose Flight and have to re-up the ability, right? Also, it cannot be greater released or any of that kind of stuff. So, like, it's your physical wings of the monster keeping them up. So you can't really like release a monster of their wings, right? Unless you cut them off. Let's see. Another interaction that is interesting is how natural weapons work. So since a natural weapon is considered a physical part of the body, for example, if I have a short sword, it's a natural weapon for the monster that I'm playing. If it gets hit with an arrow, instead of the weapon being destroyed, the arrow acts as if it has directly hit my arm. And so if I have armor on the armor goes away as per whatever the effects of the arrow are. Or if it's like a pinning arrow, if I'm not immune to like the pinning arrow's effects, it acts as if I've been pinned, that kind of stuff. But it also, if I am immune to, say, fire, and I have a natural weapon, and you hit me with a fireball on the weapon, nothing happens, right? It's an interaction that instead of losing the weapon, you lose the arm. So if I get hit with a fireball on the weapon, and I have 1 point of armor on my arm, armor's gone. If I get hit again, I just die because fireball is wounds kill, right? That is a wound to your arm, so you would die. So there's lots of interactions in the manual that can kind of be confusing at first, but after a while of sitting down and like reading through, thinking about it, it's got an interest. It's got a logic to it. Um, uh, do we have any questions from the chat? Any questions at all? All right. Thank you all very much for coming, and I hope to hear from you if you do have any questions.
Thank you, thank you, thank you so much, Delas. Once again, if you have any questions for him, you can reach out to him, Ashton Chandler, on Facebook, or you can check him out. I'm pretty sure I've seen him around the various Amtgard Discords as well. Thank you for that informative monster lecture, and with that done, we are about an hour, maybe 54 minutes away from our courts. Linnegon Local Court and Nine Blades Kingdom Court will be coming up at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So get ready, stay tuned for that. As usual, we are going to have our, what's it called? We're going to have our watch party. There we go. Watch party in the Nine Blades Discord. So please head over there for 6 o'clock and get ready to cheer on your friends as they receive the recognition that they so truly deserve. And with that said, I will remind you all, sign in if you haven't already, earn the class credit, and check out our silent auction on the Nine Blades Facebook group. I will be back closer to 6. Yeah, see you then. Bye.